Welcome to G3. We're the ladies who talk tech, talk trash, and talk trivia. That seems like it covers everything. That's why I'm saying that one today. Okay, today is May 28th, 2015. This is episode number 45. All right. We're getting into our midlife. No, I hope not. No, that doesn't sound good at all. Okay, so today my lovely co-hosts are with me, and in my upper left of our Brady Bunch screen is the lovely Francine Hardaway. Hi, Francine.
Hello.
Hi. And Christy Wells coming to us from San Francisco.
Hi, everyone.
And Mary Hodder. Hi, Mary.
Hey.
All right. So, what's going on, ladies? It's lots of stuff going on, like media things. So who wants to? I thought that
Me.
very interesting thing happened this week, because we talked about them last week. I think a bit about how much we love Recode, and Recode just got acquired by Vox. So let's hear your thoughts on that.
Well, my thought is that there is no business model for media. And it's a real shame because Kara and Walt tried to do something. They were doing a great job, and they just didn't get enough readers fast enough to get enough advertisers fast enough. And even the conference business didn't help them. And I don't know anything inside, but it's an all-stock deal. You know, an all-stock deal is, to me, a come in out of the cold. And now I hear that Comcast is buying Vox. So we now have to discuss what this is going to mean for journalism, if there is anything like journalism left.
Christy, you're nodding.
It's an interesting thing. I mean, it's great for Kara and Walt to have such immediate, I'm going to call it success, right? Because they've got another funding platform. But it is interesting, just as you start to see some of these magazines and these places magazines or online journals, whatever you want to call them, get picked up recently. So it'll be, I don't have much more value to add to what Francine just said. I just think it's an interesting and good for Walt and Kara.
Was that what Francine was saying? Is it good for Walt and Kara?
Well, of course, it's going to give them money to live, and and also money to continue the Recode conference, and which is just dynamite.
I think what the thing is she's talking about what's the state of journalism going forward, right? Because the online advertising model on a website, is difficult, right? It's hard to get eyeballs. It's who really looks to the right to click on these ads that show up. And if you're trying to push things through mobile, that's even more difficult. So I think if you are somebody like Recode and you can get somebody like a Vox to give you a funding platform, then I'm like, good on them, right? And hopefully that means they continue to write these incredible articles. And even with that, it looks like even our friends over at GigaOM just sold some of their assets over to somebody else too. So
a content farm.
Yeah, a content farm, but it's still, so the quality of writing on GigaOM is going to be interesting to watch to see if it stays up to the same standards, which our gut will probably tell us it will be different. But I think that, had they found an acquisition or a buyer beforehand, would that have given GigaOM the legs to fly as well? And so, it's tough. It's a hard market. Everybody's competing with one another. And even if you're the best writer in the world, it doesn't guarantee you're going to be able to sell that to people.
And Mary, I mean, how does this affect the product itself? I mean, is the product going to retain? And we've all felt that there's been this is a high quality product. We all read Recode. For some of us, it's our first go-to. So how does this affect them? Being acquired, having a new overlord, if you will, and how much does that does the event business that they have play into this acquisition?
Well, I think the event business, my guess is the event business actually supports the rest of the business. My guess is that their event business probably makes them $5 or $10 million a year gross. and I don't know what the cost is of the event, but that really depends on them and how much they, whether they're paying speakers or they're paying to fly people in or put them up in hotels or whatever that looks like. But there's another issue too, and that is even the advertising model. If it did work in a way, right, and we don't know, it's very hard to tell who are the people coming to websites and, who's looking at things. And then the advertisers, want to only pay for things that have a direct link, right, from somebody seeing something and then buying it later or whatever, which is ridiculous because advertising doesn't, necessarily work that way. But I posted this link, ad blockers have now gone mainstream. 41% of the public as of last September use ad blockers. I use ad blockers because
But that's not in the United States. Hang on, Mary, because I work for Zito, so I've got those statistics.
Okay.
It's 40% in Germany, otherwise, as Jeff Jarvis calls it, Blurmany, because it hates Google and it hates ads, and Anyway, German, it's 40% in Germany, and it's 30% in France, and it's 15 to 17% in the U.S. On the other hand, it's definitely going up. And so publishers who are starving are trying to figure out a way to fight it. And the way they're going to fight it is to deny access to sites whose browsers run ad blockers. And that is going to be interesting to see if that works.
Well, one of the interesting things about the ad blocking technology is I don't really care about ads. I actually filter them out of my own view. The only reason that I got it was because of all the beacons, the personal tracking, which I don't particularly like, but there's a heavy load on your browser with the personal tracking stuff. So you go to a website with 100 beacons and lots of ad software, and it takes forever to load, and it's annoying. And if you use an ad blocker, you get a quick load, and you get to do what you want to do, and you can move on. And so for me, it was more about being efficient and preventing the privacy issues from, becoming a problem. And it because I don't care about the ads. I don't, it's so...
Ad blocker sounds like friends with benefits.
It's totally amazing. It's terrific. And actually what I really use is Privacy Badger, which includes, that's from EFF, it includes AdBlocker Plus stuff, but it has a bunch of other stuff that keeps the privacy tracking and the flash cookies, which cannot be deleted, to a minimum. And all those things just slow down your machine. So for example, on the page that I posted about ad blocking, that link, Privacy Badger grabbed 3 things and suppressed them. And I don't know what they are. I don't know if they're reasonable things or not, but at this point, I really don't care. It's 3 things that would slow down my use of this page.
But I think it brings up a really important point too, because it does go mainstream and you start to see people using things like ad blocker or Privacy Badger, which I actually need to install because it sounds awesome. But it's like these guys are sustaining themselves on advertising. And so we as consumers don't want to be bothered being sold to or have slow page loads. At the same time, we're actually cutting off the potential of these guys to earn revenue. So it's actually kind of highlighting the importance of subscription-based models.
We don't want to pay for anything.
content.
We don't want to pay for it, and we don't want to pay for it with our time either.
Right.
But
Well, I think that's the thing that we're going to have to come to a decision, though. We're going to lose places like what happened if Recode didn't get picked up by Vox? Did they have a self-sustaining model, or were they actually at the point of where they could go by the wayside of a GigaOM? And so I think we as consumers have to come to terms with, if we want access to content, we have to look at finding ways to pay for it. And, I agree. I'm the first to turn off a bunch of ads because I'm not a big fan of it either. But at the same time, it's, there's got to be a happy medium.
But why are we still in the same place of counting eyeballs just for eyeballs?
We're not. The advertisers are not counting eyeballs anymore. They're counting engagement, which is very different, which means they're counting time spent on a site. In other words, they're counting something like not only did the ad appear, but if it was a video, and all the ads are going to video, and how much of the video did you watch? That's what they're counting. They're not counting impressions anymore.
Did Recode have engagement on their site? I would think that they would be fairly a high engagement site. But what I start to hear is that we're not thinking about the audience in terms of the quality of the audience. We're thinking about it in terms of are they talking a lot and sharing, and because it could be bullshit sharing. I mean, it could be nothing. So, I mean, why can't we figure out who our audience is and how important that audience is? It seems like we're still in the dark ages about that.
Let's talk about ad fraud, okay? Because here, the marketers, you're right. I mean, basically, Tina, you're right. And the marketers are all out well, marketers aren't stupid, they're out to reach the right people, and they pay a lot more money to reach the right people. But here's the other interesting thing about advertising. Advertising was always meant as a way to reach masses. Advertising as a model was never meant to reach, the 300 influencers on Recode. There's a whole lot of cheaper, easier ways to reach those people. And even if it is 1.5 million, but metaphorically it's 300. It's a niche group of people.
Well, and I think that's interesting too, because as we are trying to gather more information about people that are hitting our site, whether we are a brand or we are a journalist, and have these websites out there, that we need to have better tools to give us that demographic data, to give us access points to that. And I think that's interesting as you start to look at Facebook working more directly with New York Times and some of these other vendors, and those building those types of relationships, because Facebook has a lot of demographic data that maybe we would never think of even giving to somebody like the New York Times. And I just saw a report recently too that Twitter is now opening up more analytics, trying to encourage more people to put advertising on Twitter, which I personally have not had a lot of success with, but I might be tempted to try it again to see what they're offering.
Well, let me tell you something about that. I hate to say this, but this is my, I've been working with Zito for almost 4 years. Facebook and Google have 80% of the online ad market. Mm-hmm. So all the other publishers are fighting globally, are fighting for 20% of the online ad revenue. That's amazing. It's just not a sustainable market if everyone else is fighting for what Facebook and Google throw away.
Okay.
So to get back to an earlier thing that I can't remember somebody said, we're not paying for content. We are paying for content. We're paying for content with our personal data and our privacy by being tracked around the internet and on our phones. And if there's any way to link your phone to your online behavior, your web-based, let's say on a laptop or something, behavior, then they're grabbing your location data and everything else they can get. Right? It's incredibly personal information. It's incredibly valuable to you. It's valuable to them in microbits, right? Like amongst the millions of users that they're trying to get the attention of. And frankly, the fact that we've built a whole system that's about surreptitiously taking people's data and monetizing it without including me and us in this proposition is appalling to me. I think it's appalling that advertisers want to grab all this data so that they can figure out what to show me without asking me, right? I mean, the right system, the way that I will then stop using ad blockers and start sharing information when I want to, when I would be happy to share information with Recode if they're not connected to Comcast, because I don't trust Comcast at all. But if I had an agreement with Recode where they couldn't share my data with third parties, they couldn't share it up the chain with Comcast, they could use it to, in a black box fashion. In other words, the advertisers couldn't see my personal information. That's the problem, is that all the publishers are pressured to share the data out. I don't want my data going out. I would be happy to share accurate, correct information, and that is a form of payment for those, the content that I would like to see. But they're not asking me to do that. They're also not asking me to subscribe to pay money. But even in sites where I do subscribe, and there are a number of them where I pay, they're still selling me out by stealing my data and selling it downstream to third-party advertisers without my permission.
Well, that would be an interesting question to ask, say, Jessica Lessin. Maybe we should get Jessica Lessin on the show, because her site, The Information, is a subscriber site. And the other thing that you're saying, Mary, which I know has got to be right, is that Recode's data, once Recode becomes part of Vox and Vox becomes part of Comcast, all that data goes in one huge black hole. And Kara will try, personally, we all know Kara's ethics. So Kara will try very hard to have none of that happen, but she won't know where the data is going and what the data is being used for, and she won't have the power to make any damn difference in any of that. And I want to know how that ties to the fact that the IRS has even more data than any of the advertisers, and the IRS site got hacked yesterday, ladies.
It's all about the data. It's leaking out all over. And so it seemed to me this was kind of a little, and I see that you're trying to segue into this IRS thing too, but we're also looking at...
I want to hear what Mary thinks about the difference between, what the advertisers do with our data and what happens when the IRS keeps all our data and gets hacked. And it's hacked for sure by identity thieves.
The fact is that the government is buying private data. The 1974 Privacy Act prevented them from doing their own tracking of us. And so they use Axiom and what was formerly Checkpoint, which, they've been doing this since the mid-90s. They're buying all this data. 35 large government, the major government agencies are buying our data because they can't go out and collect it themselves. That includes the IRS. Then, we have, the partnership between private
legal loophole
and government entities grabbing our data is very tight. It's, very
But we
tight.
give the IRS our data ourselves. We fill out our tax forms and they then have our social security numbers and our addresses and our maiden names and whatever.
Sure, and
it seems like there's little we could do about that, though.
Party relationship where we're actually sharing appropriate data in order to pay our taxes. The issue is that it's so lucrative for the bad guys, basically. It's a lot of different types of people to grab that information and impersonate us. Frankly, the thing that you should do is go to the IRS and make an account with your social security number so that someone else can't. Because what's happening is 3 years ago, IRS fraud was around $4 billion. 2 years ago, it was $20 billion. This year, it's expected to be in the neighborhood, I think, of $50 billion. Basically, the fraud is that someone goes to the IRS site, they just stick in any old email address, put in your home address and your social security number, and create the account. Then at that point, they can go through after they've got the account, they can go through the process of changing the address, putting in a different bank account for depositing your refund. Last year, my father had he had someone file taxes for him. He actually owed money, but they tried to get a $20,000 refund. That's all part of this game. So hacking the IRS is really an attempt to make that possible. So, my point just is that.
Well, wait, if I've paid taxes online, this is a really important consumer point. I've paid taxes online through TurboTax since TurboTax was available. So maybe that's the last
Okay.
10 years.
So
So does that mean I still don't have an account with the IRS under
you
my
don't have an
Social
account
Security?
directly with them, but you've got at least your social security number is associated with the TurboTax thing. And it means that somebody would have to get your TurboTax information. They'd have to hack TurboTax in order to be able to do this.
Well, that'll probably happen tomorrow.
But honestly, the stuff about grabbing data, it's not so much that the IRS wants that information because they're actually pretty tightly regulated about what outside information they can use that's not provided by you or your accountant or that they don't directly investigate. Let's say you're under investigation or you're in an audit. But the other government agencies, the NSA, I mean, we're talking about the Patriot Act right now is up for review. It's about to expire. And the NSA is the one that is grabbing all that data from private companies like Google, Facebook, and everybody else. And they're the ones who are really interested, I think, in tracking you. But there are other government agencies as well. I mean, HHS cares if you are a recipient of some kind of 47% of Americans get some kind of public support. And if you're getting, a kind of support that doesn't jive with what you're doing on social media, they care, right? And so they're tracking that stuff. And
So in other words, if I were going to try to cover up my age, they would be asking for my Social Security check back.
let's say you were on disability and then they saw a video of you in, the Caribbean playing
Dancing,
tennis. They'd be
yeah.
like, yeah, they'd be like, well, wait a second, you're supposed to be on disability and you're
Yeah.
getting a federal check. So, or you've got health insurance through us or whatever. And so there's legitimate reasons why they care. And then there's illegitimate reasons. And the whole thing's gotten totally messy. But you're right, there is a huge amount of information, and most of it is coming from these beacons and flash cookies that sit all around the web and sit on our phones and our tablets and things. They grab all this data and they're then selling it downstream.
Tina, do you remember when Scoble was so excited about beacons and was saying that beacons were going to be the next thing to slice bread?
He still does, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
It's funny. It's funny because he says, oh, those privacy advocates, they're wrecking everything, and it's like, actually, in the 90th percentile, most people want some measure of privacy. Let's face it, we're all wearing clothes on this video cast, right? That clothing is a privacy enhancing technology. We all like to have some privacy, right? And it's different for different people. But I mean, we should have the choice about how we control the movement of our data, which is why I get back to publishers and sites that surreptitiously steal our data. In my view, they're doing something that most people don't want. And frankly, I think they're leaving billions on the table by not relating with us directly. If they said, look, we won't give it to a third party, but will you share your information with us so that we can do better advertising because that's our model, or you can do a subscription model, then I could say, oh, I have the choice of subscriptions, I can share information, and I know it's not going to go any further. Okay, now I'm making a good choice for me and them, and now I would share, let's say it was the New York Times, and they, in addition to, wanting to know what topics or categories I'm interested in, they said, you read the book section all the time. Can you share what books you've purchased at Amazon in the last year? If I knew it wasn't going past the New York Times, I'd be happy to share that information with them, especially for free content.
Well, that has
So
has been ruined by ad tech, because the ad tech people and all the data collectors have gotten between the marketers and the publishers. And
Right.
so the publishers kind of have their own data and the marketers kind of have their own data. And what a lot of the ad tech people do, not all of them, some of them like Zito just serve the ads, but the people between the publishers and the advertisers, they combine the data and supposedly give it back to you as more accurate data, or more targeted data.
You as who?
give it back to you, the publisher or the marketer,
Okay.
as
Okay.
more accurate data so that you can serve people more relevant ads. Everybody wants to serve people more relevant ads. Nobody wants to serve people ads
Sure.
they hate. The marketer doesn't and the publisher doesn't.
Sure. But then the question that I have is why the hell can't I get a copy of my data? Because this data is about, the slice of that data is about me, and see what they've got and make corrections, and or maybe say, you know what, I'm not even in a relationship with you. I don't even look at your site. Why do you have my information? Delete it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's the appropriate relationship with individuals. And wow, we have computers that can talk to people and they can munch millions of people's data. I mean, it's like, why aren't we developing systems that can talk directly to the individual and say, here's what we're really doing? Like,
Wow, that's a huge business opportunity, Mary.
Okay. All
That's
right.
a
Well,
huge
we
business
seem to be
opportunity.
on this. I just want to kind of move this along a little bit here, but kind of in the same scary vein, since we're
Well,
all
it's
uh,
why I say we're leaving billions of dollars on the table, because there's like this giant business opportunity to actually do the right thing and get way better data, and then we could do the relevant ads, right?
Exactly. That's exactly right. To give each consumer control of his or her, and this is like the primitive form of it, but this is how I would envision it. You give each consumer his or her data and a list of potential places that want it, and have them check on the list who they would want to share it with and who they wouldn't.
okay.
Do that,
In
company,
in a
Mary.
similar vein, in a similar scary vein, um, so we're looking at Facebook Messenger. Someone wrote an interesting little tidbit about Facebook Messenger, and how most of our vanilla settings, our default settings, have our location um, uh, in our as part of our chats in Facebook Messenger, and this kind of creates an issue of really being able to track someone's whereabouts, even if you are not friends with them. So let's say you're in a group, a Facebook Messenger group. The group is created by someone you know that you're friends with, but then there are all these other people that you're not friends with. And all of a sudden, you can actually find out their whereabouts. They can find out your whereabouts. Is this kind of is a problem, isn't it? And
Not
what do
for
we?
me.
Not for you.
Well, I mean, it is in a sense of, I mean, actually that Marauders app article made me immediately go check my phone settings to make sure I wasn't sharing that actual messenger data, or messenger was not collecting my GPS data. Because honestly, it did kind of weird me out. It's the same reason why I'm not using, some of the location-based services anymore, because I really just don't want people who I don't know to know where I live.
Right.
And some of my habitual places that I visit. And it's not that I'm being an alarmist. It's just that to Mary's point earlier, there's certain things that I'm actually okay people knowing, and I'm very intentional with what I put out there. But I don't want some of these apps to automatically grab my location data and share it with people that I don't have any idea with. And I know it still happens on other apps. I need to probably go through all my settings. But the Marauders app was fascinating, and it actually opened my eyes to a couple quick things. So it's interesting. It's scary too.
Yeah.
I actually never installed Facebook Messenger because I just had this feeling that it was bad.
But
And
it's
to me,
so
this
easy
is
to
like,
use.
Yeah, I held out for months, Mary. I mean, I honestly, I was one of those, I was like, I'm not going to do it. I refuse to do it. It's kind of like, when Foursquare broke out into Swarm and made me download another app. I'm like, no, that's just not good usability for me. It breaks my experience. But I will tell you, Facebook Messenger has been very functional in that respect.
Yeah.
At the same time, it upsets me if knowing that these settings are set automatically to go through and collect your GPS and put that out there. And
Yeah,
that a
just turn off your
student can go
GPS.
through and put an app together in a couple of days and all of a sudden show all my data out there. And it's the way of the world. Oops, it's the way of the world. And we're going to have to just get comfortable that a lot of that data is going to be out there for people to have access to. At the same time, I do want to set those controls and try to like not allow as much of that to go out without me knowing about it at least.
Well, we got to wonder though why the default, that is the default. Why isn't it that, our privacy is protected as the default, and then, we flip the switch and
Because
share our
lobbyists.
location.
Because lobbyists in Washington made everything opt out rather than opt in. I remember when that was going on with direct marketing, don't you?
It's just our regular model these days.
right.
Do it the way you want, and then make everybody opt out.
Remember
That's
you had
right.
to pay extra money? I'm going to totally date myself, but remember when you had to pay extra money to take your name out of the white pages? Right?
Yeah.
And this is kind of it. You have to pay extra, you have to make those extra steps to take your name out of the public databases. And, I used to date a guy and I used to joke all the time at the dawn of the internet when, he actually made a just concerted effort to ensure that there was very little about him on the web, right? I mean, he wasn't like he was hiding anything, but he actually had crazy privacy concerns, and just for fun I actually tried to look for him recently, not for anything sordid, but just out of curiosity, just to see what's going on, and I still can find very little about him on the web. And it's interesting when you look at that. It's like that's
But it
somebody
takes an
who's made-
effort.
It is. It's like, but that's his thing, right? That he's adamant about not having his life exposed, where for us and several of us, actually most of us on this call, you kind of know what's on our mind because we're posting it on Facebook. You know where we are if we're checking in on Yelp or we're checking in on Foursquare. The places we like to go because we're sharing that on Instagram. And so a lot of us actually share that data without actually thinking about the long tail of what that data being exposed can do. And like Mary said, I hope a lot more of us are becoming more educated consumers, so at least we know who has access to what and what they're doing with it. But honestly, most people are just super happy to have Facebook as a content platform, and they really don't care.
When the benefit outweighs the danger or the cost, then we still go for it.
Well, we are a very convenience-driven society. For better or for worse, we have been trained up to be consumers and worship convenience. And if you really look at the entire on-demand economy, and I don't mean to get us into that, but we really have chosen convenience. Anyone who has a dime in their pocket has chosen convenience.
Well, Francine, that's a good kind of segue. Have you seen that article posted about that service called Duffel?
Yeah.
Duffel.
Talk about convenience, right? I mean, is this really the way of the world that we're going? That it's a service, it's DUFL, and it's a service where you can send your clothes and your suitcase to somebody. They will pack it for you and ship it to your hotel, so that you don't have the inconvenience of having to pack your own bag, wait for it at bag check, drag it to the hotel room, and then when you're done, you can send all your dirty laundry to them, and they will wash and fold it and store it until your next trip.
Is now when I tell you that Bill Reinhardt is a very close friend of mine, and this is the third company of his that I've been on the advisory board of?
Oh,
Look,
yeah.
it's interesting. It's like the first comment is like, no way would I send somebody my underwear, right? But at the same time, I'm like going, some people will pay that because it's a convenience to them. And
Here's what
it's the
people
same
are
reason why we use Uber, because it's easy and it's convenient for me to like plot myself on a map and have a car come
And
to
is
me.
it-
Rather than me chase a
Here-
taxi cab.
And the
Here's
dollar
what-
cost, hang on 1 second. The dollar cost of that service, is it $100 a flight? I mean, one leg, or is it a round trip?
It's $100 a trip, a round trip, and that includes the cleaning, the laundry, and the pressing. So it's for people who are on the road a lot, it's a huge convenience, because what you do what you do is Mary, so I'm not saying one way or the other. I know what you're saying. But it's actually internally financed by a group of friends because it's nobody's first rodeo. And it's something they, I think, wanted for themselves. But saw a lot of good for road warriors.
Yeah.
And what you do is you buy yourself, for
Extra
argument's
stuff.
sake, 6 pair of jockey shorts and 6 polo shirts like the kind you wear at conferences, and 3 pairs of khakis, and a bunch of socks and a couple of pairs of shoes. Throw them in the suitcase, and that suitcase goes back and forth. And if you want to change something that's in it, you can add and subtract. But I like it. I mean, I went on the advisory board because I like it. I don't think it's for everybody, but I really do like it.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I wasn't saying it was a negative or a positive thing. I just thought it was fascinating because we're talking about the age of convenience.
Right.
And it definitely is, quote unquote, maybe it plays into the sharing economy because I'm sharing my things with people. It's not actually, but whatever.
I
But I
hope
think
not.
that
I hope they don't send your underwear to somebody else.
me
Yeah,
too.
really.
But I
mean,
think it was
really,
just fascinating when we're talking about what we are willing to give. Whoops,
Right.
sorry. I just say what we were willing to give people access to be more convenient for us. And I take enough business trips that when I read the article, I'm like, oh, that like the washing and the folding and having it ready at the hotel for me sounded fabulous. And then it was well, I don't know that I'm really that ready to kind of send my goods off and have them stored somewhere and do that. But I get the business practicality of it. I just thought like, wow, we really are becoming that society where it's all going to be everything we're getting is out of a machine, and there's.
Well, here's another interesting aspect to that. Your employer can pay the $100 a trip for you because for the employer that is deductible, whereas you can charge it off as an expense. Whereas if you were trying to get your dry cleaning and your laundry done after every trip, you couldn't.
Well, and
So,
that also saves you on baggage fees too, right? Because
right.
most airlines right
Right.
now charge you baggage fee, and some of it's $50 each way. So that already pays for the service. So
So
I think it's
there's a lot.
interesting. I
There's a
just
lot
thought,
of good parts to
I
it.
I can't
yeah,
do it. I mean, the last minute things that you have to
Bill's
take
no
with
dope.
you, the things that you don't know that that got to go in the bag, and then you've got to send those things to the bag, or I don't know. They'll bring you the bag when you need the bag at home to refresh stuff, and it's way too complicated for me. I could never, ever, ever do it. But
well,
I
like
think
Francine said, if there's
Francine's
a
right. It's
purpose,
for a very specific group
yeah.
of people who live on airplanes,
Right.
and I
Don't
guess that
care
would be
if
a great
all their
service for them.
clothing is washed at the same temperature in the same load, which I would never
No,
allow. I mean,
that's so
I
totally not what they do there. I went and saw the plant. Listen to you. I went and saw this plant, and they have separate washers, and and one of
Are they going to
the
air dry my undies?
yeah, because I don't dry my clothes. I
if
hang
you
them
ask,
and I wash them at
Yeah.
different
if
temperatures.
you ask, they have a huge warehouse, and you can have anything done that you ask. And one of the things that Bill talks about is paying people a living wage rather than a minimum wage to do these things, so that they do it the way you would want it done. And it's a cross between a convenience service and this century's equivalent of a personal valet. And again, it is not for everyone, but truthfully, if you're me and you're traveling through an airport, and and you're going overseas, and you're on a flight that's 14 hours, and you have to change planes somewhere and check it in through customs and out through, there's just a lot of PETA involved in traveling nowadays. And the people who travel a lot will, I think, recognize the value of it.
Absolutely, without a doubt. And like
And
you
I'm
said, if they
prejudiced.
for me, it was all about getting the clothes back. But when you talk about, having just a second set of attire, right, that
Second
they
set of
keep,
everything.
and and if you go to conferences or you go to things like I probably wear close to the same thing most every week because I'm just a creature of habit. And so, for me, it wouldn't be about trying to add new staples in. And if I did, maybe I'm just packing an overnight bag that I carry along with me along the way. But
Oh, and they'll
I
buy
thought it
them
was
for you.
fascinating just because of the service, and it's just one of many. It's all about conveniences. And so when we start talking about what we're willing to give people access to, like I might be willing to give him access to my undergarments if it meant that there's a lot more convenience for me at my destination. And so I just, for me, it kind of tied all in together. I thought it was fascinating. I didn't know you had any connection to it, which is great, you know, because it'd be fun to watch to see what happens.
If they're gonna get access to my undergarments, I want a little note, handwritten,
I'll
lovely
tell Bill.
little
I'll
love
tell
note.
Bill you want
Christy
a
was
little note.
here. Yeah.
And you want lavender in your
I wonder.
undergarment.
I wonder how much. I mean, to me, this is another interesting example of the way that our economy is centralizing, right? So one of the key indicators of collapsing civilization is when everything becomes so centralized that there's nothing that happens on its own. Everything has to go through the central. That's why Rome collapsed, the Mayans collapsed, you know, the
Board.
Khmer.
So this is a sign of the
Well,
apocalypse.
I just wonder. It's another sign is when the leaders, like the Bill Gates of the world and the, you know, Bill Clintons of the world, say we're in the golden age. Every time people say we're in the golden age, like Rome then collapsed, like within 20 years, and you know, all these different. And so it's like, you know, it sounds like this giant centralized laundry service to me, and it's like, wow. So
No, it's actually a centralized storage service because they'll also keep your ski equipment and your golf clubs and all the rest of that stuff. And that part of the service is for people who have downsized into smaller spaces or live in urban environments and don't have room to store stuff that
Yeah.
they really like to use but don't use every day. And basically, he views it as a logistics business, not as a packing
my-
business.
A friend of mine moved in Seattle recently, and I thought what she did was brilliant. She used another service that's local in Seattle. And what they do is they're more about logistics and storage. And so you call them up, you say, okay, or you get on their website or whatever. You say, I need 30 boxes. And you say, you know, I want you to drop them in this date and then pick them up on this date. And then either you can have them go back into storage or you can have them deliver them to a different location. Rather than hiring, so they bought a house, and they lived in their apartment for 10 years. They had a lot of shit. And so she hired movers to do like the sofas and the beds and stuff. But everything else, she had them deliver boxes, this one service that was about storage, not about moving. She filled all the boxes and then basically told them to come and pick it up and the next day to deliver it to the new house. And so she moved her entire, the contents of her house. She had like a, you know, 1,800 square foot apartment that went to a, you know, 2,500 square foot house.
Yep.
So a lot of stuff, right?
Right.
She basically had them do it in 3 tranches in the 2-week overlap that they still had the apartment. And basically it cost her, I think she said it cost her like $400. And it was
Good
so
Lord.
much cheaper than hiring a moving company. And then she hired people to come and move like the sofa and, you know, the dining table.
Well, we
and
need to put a link in about that one.
so she spent $300 moving like four big pieces of furniture, and then the rest of it was just, you know, she was super smart about it. And so she had gotten quotes that were like $3,000 to $5,000 for moving her house, and she did it all for like $800.
Good Lord. Okay.
I was
Well,
super
she's
impressed.
smart cookie on that one.
There'll be a day when Duffel would do that.
I
Yeah.
just had a daughter who moved, and I was thinking someone's got to do an Uber for moving.
Well,
Right.
yeah.
You know.
I mean, Duffel could take that stuff. They've got a great deal with FedEx, so they could take a lot of that stuff, small stuff in boxes, and FedEx it to your new location. You know.
And you know, another great thing is, speaking of, you know, moving and storing things, is that, you know, you try your hardest to get rid of shit. I mean, we're all trying to get rid of shit. You should see my house. Oh my God. But so you get rid of as much as you can when you move, but there's still stuff that just doesn't seem right after you move. So if you could just get your boxes, you know, deliver 1 box a day to me for 30 days and let me start just putting things in place, and I get down to the point where I think I've got enough.
1-800 got
Dump those
junk.
other boxes. I don't want to see them anymore.
1-800 got junk. They pick it up and get rid of it for you.
Right, but I mean in a staged sort of, uh, very look through things, get the house together, and then whatever isn't there at the end just goes out. So
See, I thought that's what Mary's person was going to do with the service that she hired was move into her new house, stare around herself and say, and as things come up that she's missing, say, send me box number one,
right.
Well,
seven.
she did do that. Some of the boxes she had sent immediately, like all their clothes and stuff.
Yeah.
But then she had stuff. She would lay everything out on the ground that went into a box, take a picture of it. Then they have a scanner, and she would attach the barcode to the photo, and then she could send
this
them the
woman does not
barcode.
have children, right? Because she
Uh,
sounds really organized.
Actually, it's not that I think she's that organized, but the thing is, they sent her the barcode scanner for all the boxes.
Oh, they
So-
sent the barcode scanner.
Yeah,
I thought
they
she had her
sent
own barcode scanner, and
And
she was just
each-
really
No.
okay.
But each box had a barcode on it. They send the scanner, and then you take a photo with your phone, and then you take somehow
Yeah.
they connect the scanned item.
That's
So
cool.
then part of their
Guess what?
service is just go to their thing, you look at the photo, and then she would say, "Send me this box," and then they would send it the next day. And,
Francine is
you know,
standing up because her watch told her to.
That's correct.
We know that she does this on the hour, every hour. We just got to get the. Now, speaking of
It's
which, we've got
50
10
minutes.
minutes before our hard stop, ladies. Some of us have to
Yep.
go at once. So, where are we? We barely moved
Meeker's
on
Tech
from
Trends.
Duffel.
No, but we've already done Kara Swisher, and we've already
The
done.
the Meeker report came out. Who has
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
Meeker
who has
Meeker
read it
report.
from cover to cover?
I read it.
197 slides. Who
I
has
read
that
it
on the cover?
yesterday.
Okay,
I read it yesterday.
give us your
And-
take.
And here's the deal: mobile
Mobile. Thank
Mobile
you. That was
and-
quick.
mobile.
video, and slowing in the developed countries and growing in the emerging markets.
In other
think
words, no
that
surprises.
Oops, sorry.
Not really.
Okay.
The thing
Not
I was gonna say I
really.
thought was interesting about the video section too was the trend for people to start going vertical instead of
I
this
know
way.
that was an amazing thing on that report.
Incredible.
Was that she gave a slide or two to
Yeah.
the change to vertical video. I was
Well,
like,
you know how
really?
many times I've mistakenly recorded a video like this, only to then have it be so small when people do this?
Mm.
I am thrilled to know that that's going to be a trend, or that
Yeah,
is a trend.
me too, because we all carry our phones that way.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one good thing.
Vertical
That was an
trend.
amazing insight. Yeah.
Yeah, and the part about ad blockers was actually in there, but mostly it was mobile and mostly video, and how much video people watch
Mm.
and what small screens they watch it on.
Well, and also that the average person spends 5.6 hours a day on the internet. And I'm like, I do that because that's my job, but like,
What are all you doing out there, right?
I just like, it's incredible. 5.6 hours.
Yeah.
It's like you take that and then here's the thing, and here's the problem I'm going to say we have in the US, and I'm as guilty, is you spend 5.6 hours a day on the net, then you spend maybe another 5 hours at TV. And I'm like, we're very, sit on the couch type of group of people. And I just
That's
found
why
that
I just stood
fascinating.
up.
That number was bigger than I expected.
Well, are you sure that didn't mean consuming two screens simultaneously? Because I know that I read another report that said we were spending even more time in front of screens, but that meant, we were watching television
Yeah.
while texting or, whatever.
My
I
favorite
didn't
is
see
watching
that stat.
TV, playing a game, a little mindless game, and also, picking up and chatting. So I've got a few devices around me and getting a little R&R.
Yeah, and see, that's very interesting
Entertainment.
because it's now no longer enough to just watch TV.
Right.
That's
Well,
amazing.
That's the attention thing, right? I think
But we're
that's
humans.
we're creating our own worst enemy right now with regards that I don't know many people sit there and have this attached, some kind of device attached to them at all times, and now it's on the watch, and it's always surrounding you. And I guess that's where I kind of freak out a little bit of that. We're so reliant on technology and multitasking, and that, yeah, I'm as guilty having my laptop open and my phone next to me and watching TV.
Let me tell you this one thing, though. When I said we're human, this is what I mean, and I think it's something that's very ingrained in us from childhood or babyhood. I remember my daughter, my firstborn, learning how to walk upstairs. And when a small baby learns how to walk upstairs, they crawl, right? They're crawling, they're on all fours. So she would get that down, she'd do it a couple times, and then she'd go find something to pick up. And she'd pick that up, and she'd have that in one hand, and then she would do the stairs again, because it was a little bit harder. And then she'd find something else to make it even more complicated. She'd start doing the three-legged thing, or she'd do it at the very end, and she'd be on two legs. So I think it's a kind of a human response that if we develop these things, like, build it and they will come, okay, throw a whole bunch of devices at me. Now I'm going to start to use them all at once. And so it is kind of challenging. On the other hand, it's kind of interesting to see how we're developing that way. I mean,
We are developing the attention span of a goldfish. I read that somewhere, which is about 7 seconds.
Well, and also I'd love to know what the correlation is between the use of all these screens and the need for eyeglasses earlier in life.
oh,
Because
yeah.
I can tell you this can't be good for my eyes.
Yeah,
right?
I think
And
my eyes are deteriorating fast, and I have no idea whether it's just regular age or whether it's all these screens.
yeah.
Well,
So-
my eyes are not deteriorating. I probably spend more time on the internet than all of you. And,
Well, I don't know about that.
Well, but I spend a great deal of time. And
I think she
I don't-
spends more than me, definitely.
yeah, because you have more meetings.
Yes.
That's what it is. It's a
Meetings are
function
on
of
the
how
internet.
many meetings do you
So
have?
every meeting I have is on the internet. Hello, here we
Oh.
are in a meeting on the internet. Like I've already spent 5.5 hours online today on meetings on the internet, right? Like, I mean, everything. I probably spend 16, maybe 15, 16 hours a day on the internet.
So
did
my
the-
meeting is on the
Did
internet.
did the Meeker report say internet is our life?
Oh, of
Because that's what
course.
it is, right?
That's pretty much.
course.
Well, and also I think one of the interesting things, one of the only other slides that really kind of called out to me, because I haven't gone through 197 of them yet, but I scanned through it quickly, and the other one was, and we know this, like the embracing of the shared economy and how a lot of people are turning things like the Airbnb and Etsy and Uber into second income opportunities for them. And I thought that was interesting because we felt it, right? We know people are doing this. And I have lots of friends I have several friends who are actually driving for an Uber or for a Lyft because they want to generate extra income, and that it actually is a global trend. I thought was kind of interesting.
The second job is turned into the second enterprise, or yeah.
Oh,
Okay,
but it's also indicative of how underemployed so many people are, right? Like if they had good wages at a full-time job, they wouldn't need to do that. A lot of people have.
Who's got the hard stop at 1? Mary? Oops.
I don't know.
Mary.
But
I know we've got to wrap this up because one of us had a hard stop at 1 o'clock.
right.
So, well, we'll see. Maybe Mary will come back and say, did this happen to us last week? Like at
Yes,
the very
Mary had a
end.
hard stop, and she just hard stopped.
She just hard stopped.
That's what she does.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding. Oh,
All
wait,
right.
here's
Sure,
another
I mean-
thing in Mary Meeker's report. Consumer drone shipments rising rapidly, up 167% year over year. That's amazing.
Okay, I was just trying to see if Mary was trying to come back on, but I think we'll have to wrap this up. Gosh, we didn't get to shopping on Yelp, which was
Oh, I wanted to talk. Well,
kind of
Oh.
interesting. And Twitter, maybe looking at Flipboard. Our Robert Scoble's friend Flipboard, because he loves that. Me, not so much. I tried. Okay, so now Mary's screen is totally gone. So we will say goodbye. Let me thank our. Let me thank you, Ustream, for providing streaming and recording services to G3 each and every week. Thank you very much. And to NewTek and their TriCaster, which allows us to do this wonderful show on video. Thank you, of course, to my lovely co-host, Mary Hodder, who had to leave us on the dot, Francine Hardaway, and Christy Wells. Thank you.
And thank Alex DeSoto, who was in the chat again.
Oh, Alex, bless you, bless you, bless you. We have to get you some friends in the chat. We're going to figure out how to do that, populate the chat a little bit. But it's kind of new, so we'll get it going. We'll get it going. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, we've got a chat at chat.center/G3. That's while we're doing the live show only. There's a live chat going on, and you can join in, talk to other people who are watching the show, or talk to us through that chat mechanism. And it's very, very easy to get on board. So, okay, let's get our logo together, and we'll say until next week. Or actually, I'm not so sure about next week. We're still trying to figure that out. I have a little bit of a travel day, so we'll let you know. Check in on our Facebook page, and until the next time, let's say bye-bye.
Bye-bye.